Let's take a look at some charts on Litecoin from this week's article on Brave New Coin. So Litecoin is a proof of work network that's essentially a carbon copy of Bitcoin with a few adjustments. Litecoin had its halving on August 6, 2019. Inflation is currently 4%. So it's a tough sell when you're comparing it to Bitcoin at 1.8% inflation. Since Litecoin's halving, price has not increased, more so just ranged with the rest of the market and or remained flat. Naysayers of Bitcoin love to point to this and say, well, see, look, supply decreased, but price didn't go up. Halvings aren't blanketly bullish. I mean, whatever, it's a different coin, right? It's all of the metrics I'm about to show you boil down to not many people care about Litecoin. Now, if you're in the Litecoin community, that might be bracing or jarring to hear. But based on what I can see, not much activity on Litecoin in general from various different metrics. Here's the block time. Again, it's different than Bitcoin in that it's 2.5 minutes instead of 10 minutes. So that's a 4x total supply eventuality. And also potentially a quarter worth of Bitcoin. If all things being equal, if Bitcoin was 10K, then Litecoin should be 2,500 is some arguments of some people. But block times have remained around 2.5 minutes with no real major deviations recently. I mean, block times will go up, will go down, but in general, pretty steady for Litecoin. You can't talk about Litecoin without talking about development. If you look at two of the major repos, this is their Litecoin improvement protocols. This is the main Litecoin repo. Now they essentially have one guy copying the Bitcoin protocol improvements over to Litecoin in a lagging fashion, and there isn't necessarily any new unique developments to Litecoin other than Mempool and extension blocks, which are potentially coming eventually, which add a possible layer of privacy and also add this other issue of hidden inflation potentially, because extension blocks are black boxes of consensus that may or may not screw up the main chain's consensus as far as supply issues are concerned. So there's a whole host of concerns with extension blocks that I'm glad this is being tested on Litecoin and not Bitcoin. Similar to SegWit, where we're going to need to see it work without flaws for a long time, I think, to be comfortable with it on any other chain that's of size. If we look at Litecoin's transaction counts and transaction sizes, I saw this the other day. I didn't know what the heck was going on with the transactions here. I figured it was a botnet, but turns out it was a decentralized RPG called Lightbringer that uses Litecoin as microtransactions. You can see mean transaction sizes decreased from what they were pretty substantially to nearly zero. So usually that's a good indicator of microtransactions. A lot of transactions that are tiny. And the next thing I always wanted to look at when there's any increase in activity is the mempool. Has this affected transactions that are waiting around? Typically, Litecoin has less than 200 transactions in the mempool waiting to be confirmed. And since that game was released, the mempool 5x'd. And it's kind of holding at around 500 to 1,000, somewhere around there, pending transactions at any given time. So there's this other argument that, if any chain ever gets popular enough like Ethereum or like Bitcoin, at the end of the day, nothing can scale. Nothing is ever good enough. Nothing is ever going to be good enough, because if a chain becomes popular, then it just can't handle it, right? Until there's like layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 solutions that can deal with the traffic. So it's an interesting hypothesis or assertion of decentralized coins in general that it's pretty hard to disagree with, because Litecoin, has had very little activity pending for a long time, and then all of a sudden one CryptoKitties happens to to Litecoin, and there's tons of unconfirmed transactions. If we look at block sizes, those also increased basically to multi-month highs. All-time highs were when Bitcoin's fees were extremely high and everyone was using other chains, including Litecoin, to send transactions because it was faster and cheaper. Now we're seeing this microtransaction decentralized RPG thing that's increasing block sizes. And fees, though, are down, which is bullish. It says that it can actually scale a little bit, even though tons of transactions are pending, right? Transaction fees have not spiked, unlike Ethereum, which is good. So it says there's plenty more room in Litecoin real estate on the blockchain that it can handle this sort of activity. I mean, the average block size has been below 0.5 megabyte basically forever, and it's got 2 to 4 megabytes ceiling because of SegWit. So it's got tons of room for upside as far as if this game becomes popular, if new games pop up on Litecoin, that sort of thing. If we look at the NVT and active addresses have kind of held steady at multi-month highs, which is certainly bullish for any chain. It's not month over month increases, but just sort of holding at previous highs. And in reality, the highest it's really been outside of 2017, 2018. NVT is hard to take seriously because even if I zoom out and average the average, which is what I have here, this is a 30-day average of a 90-day moving average. It's just all over the place, completely binary. Basically, it holds above 60 and bounces below 120. So it'll double in half just randomly based on network activity. But if NVT is decreasing, that says that the market cap is not adequately priced in on-chain activity, which currently would make sense because on-chain activity is extremely high relative to where it's ever been. If you look at MVRV, another metric comparing activity to market cap, the buy zone has been anything below 5.5, and the sell zone has been anything above 2.5. And we're closer to the buy zone than the sell zone, so it says there's plenty of upside opportunity should price continue to increase. Which if Bitcoin does, I expect Litecoin to follow. Maybe not to an equal degree, but it'll follow definitely. Litecoin's hash rate has also been all over the place, which speaks more to botnet activity than anything, because we don't have new script ASICs coming that we're aware of. So this could be covert mining activity, but to see hash rate so volatile on a coin that doesn't see much speculative activity or just activity in general, it's a bit weird that hash rate is all over the place recently, over the past few months. It's definitely a multi-month highs, which is good for security reasons. But it's not because of ASICs, I don't think. I mean, there's no ASICs here in 2020 that are known. All the ASICs that we have listed here are in profit, except the oldest one, or July 2017 in a silicon. So miners are making profit loosely, but that still doesn't explain to me what's going on here. I'm not really sure what that's about. And if you look at Google Trends, they're basically as flat as they can be over the past 2 years. And if we zoom way in, again, they're at the bottom of the bottom. It's just nobody cares about Litecoin, I guess. I don't know. If you're not in the know about crypto, I don't think Litecoin is among the conversation of people in general. Looking at technicals, we have Bitfinex long shorts, VPVR, RSI, and yearly pivots. So Litecoin's got a death cross on the 5200. It's below the major volume node at 5262, somewhere around here. So it's going to need some juice to pass 75 again, is what I'm seeing. There's really no pattern or anything here that I can discernibly see. It's just a lot of random walk, turtle soup, whatever you want to call it. Bottom side support stands at around 35, 33, something like that. I don't think this will actually sell off on the USD pair just because BTC and ETH look pretty bullish here. I don't think it'll keep up with BTC though. If this can get past 75, like let's say for instance, BTC hits a new all-time high. Once that happens, then the odds of LTC making a run increase because there's some rotation that goes on from BTC to other coins that haven't moved as aggressively. So if LTC can make its way to 65, 75, there's a decent shot it'll retest the local high at like 130, 120, something like that. But on its own, I don't think it does anything spectacular in the near term. Cloud is bearish as well, below the cloud. There is a bit of a TKC clamp, so it's going to want to return to the mean at around 54. But is that tradable? Is that reliable? I don't really know. It's really just been mostly down or market following. It hasn't really led anything since April 2019. And then lastly, the LTCBTC chart is quite sad indeed. No mean reversion on this chart. This is the weekly chart, by the way. Hasn't mean reverted in a long time. It had this head and shoulders here-ish. It had another head and shoulders here. Had another head and shoulders here. Had an inverted something here, cup and handle maybe. Just all sorts of bearish. Here's a nice Adam and Eve here. Nice Adam and Eve here. If you zoom way out, you'll see lots of patterns in retrospect. But they help tell the story of why this thing can't hold 01, for example. Just consistent reversal patterns over and over and over and over. So when it broke this support level at like 007, it's really struggled to come back to that. You could argue here a falling wedge situation. But I think until BTC makes an all-time high, it's hard to think that LTC is going to outperform. Certainly the mean reversion target is like 009. Big volume node here. The 200-week EMA is there as well. And there's a yearly pivot at 01. So none of this is bullish for LTC in the price-wise realm. It's really probably just going to follow everything else. I don't see it acting on its own anytime soon. And fundamentals are mediocre. It's got some stuff in the works. It's got some decentralized games coming, apparently. Lightbringer, check it out. But overall, I don't think there's anything too exciting for me or others regarding LTC in the near term.